All right, a few stories on COVID here. The first one has to do with the Oklahoma National Guard, where the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin I guess Stitt, removed the guy who was the adjunct commander of the Oklahoma National Guard, and then which is well within the governor's power and all that, and then appointed Brigadier General Thomas Mancino to be the head of Oklahoma's National Guard, who then issued a press statement saying that the Oklahoma National Guard would be receptive to exemptions on medical or religious basis for people who don't want to get the vaccine, and that they wouldn't be enforcing the federal Pentagon level vaccine mandate. So, getting into the details of it, it does appear that the decision was made by the governor because of the COVID issue. Initially it wasn't clear, and I don't think there's been a public statement to say that it was the COVID issue, but there's been reporting from inside of the governor's administration suggesting that his issue with with the former head of the Oklahoma National Guard was that he wanted to encourage the mandate and to say that the Pentagon's mandate was legal and stood and everything like that. So this is the situation in Oklahoma. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to play out. It may have some interesting implications legally for, say, the Defend the Guard movement as to who really has control over the National Guard. And, feel how you feel about this particular COVID mandate and whether they're going to enforce it or not. The Pentagon not having control over the National Guard, I think, is a good thing. The U.S. has promised to deliver millions of Johnson & Johnson vaccinations to the border of Thailand and Myanmar as a part of the program that the U.S. said it was participating in to deliver vaccines to war-stricken areas. This is the International COVAX program that the U.S. is going to be donating these vaccines through. COVAX, all capitals there. And these particular vaccines that the U.S. is donating are a group of Johnson & Johnson vaccines that have been sitting in a warehouse for several months when the manufacturer of the vaccine thought that they or had actually botched doses of it, and they weren't sure if these were good or not. And then over the last several months, the FDA has gone through, tested all these vaccines, and I guess confirmed, at least reasonably, that they were okay and cleared them for use. And so these are the vaccines that the U.S. is sending. There is maybe something a little bit uncomfortable with that, but at the same time, what are you going to do? Let them go to waste. Now, I will say, and something that I've discussed quite a bit, is I feel like the U.S. has continued to put these vaccines in areas mainly to counter China, and that this is more of a PR move than actual looking to help the world poor. There's a lot of countries that have done far worse in response to COVID than these Southeast Asian countries, and countries with lower vaccination rates already, and with their more vulnerable populations still at risk of COVID. Also, you have examples of lots of refugees pouring from Afghanistan to Iran, and COVAX is helping with those. And while those refugees are definitely definitely a result of the American 20-year war there, and those refugees I think are ones that the U.S. maybe has more of a obligation to really support and help. The U.S. won't do it, of course, because then it would be going through Iran. And I believe those COVID vaccines are coming through different countries. Now, the U.S. will also donate 1 million Moderna shots to Vietnam. This is a country, again, that has a relatively high vaccination rate. I think like 50% of the population, or at least of the adult the population that's available to receive the COVID vaccine in Vietnam does have it. And so it's interesting that the U.S. is again targeting countries that's maybe looking to sway over to our direction on the China issue rather than the countries that need the vaccine the most. The Navy made a statement on unvaccinated sailors, saying that they would be dismissed. The deadline to get your vaccination in the Navy is November 28th. You had to be fully vaccinated by then. And I believe that means, like, even if you were vaccinated today, you wouldn't be considered fully vaccinated for a whole 2 weeks, and so you wouldn't hit that deadline. Now, I'm sure the Navy will not be kicking out people who would be fully vaccinated in like 2 days. They just didn't get the shot early enough or something like that. And my guess is that they're going to make a couple threats and really push people to get the vaccine. But we do find out some information in this article I have here about generally how vaccinated the military branches are. We're seeing that I believe Navy has a 99%, at least what they're reporting, percent of people who have gotten at least one vaccination. In the Air Force, that would be 97%, Army 95%, and then 94% in the Marines. Now, my guess is that these are people who are fully vaccinated, so you either have one dose of the Johnson & Johnson, although they describe it in the article as having at least one dose. So I'm not exactly sure, maybe that they are just saying one dose, and like the other 5% or so, most of the people actually have taken the Johnson & Johnson and would be considered fully vaccinated. The Air Force says that 10,000 are unvaccinated, and most are seeking exemptions. 800 exemptions have been refused, and 1,800 have been granted so far. If you have your exemption refused by the Navy, they will only give you 5 days to then get your first dose of the vaccination. All right, that is what I have on that story. We now have this very interesting article from Axios. The White House is looking to spend billions of dollars to ramp up the production of COVID-19 vaccinations to at least 1 billion doses per year. I think that at least is important there. And then 1 billion, of course, is an interesting number, since there are only, like a third of 1 billion total population in America. So this would, be enough for 3 doses a year for Americans, although, to be fair, they may plan to be exporting some of these. The fact that, again, they're doing 1 billion doses a year, I think suggests that they are planning on having people take these vaccinations at least once a year, if not more. Although, again, that is just, my speculation. Maybe they do plan on exporting all of these. But it does seem to be at least an annual thing. Also note that this is just for the mRNA vaccinations. They are not looking to increase the production capabilities of, say, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine or the Novavax, which is potentially going to be approved soon and is a more standard version of a COVID vaccine. We have AstraZeneca announcing that they will begin taking profits from the AstraZeneca vaccine. This one is not approved in the U.S. and so really doesn't hit us here in the U.S., but it is interesting that, you have all these companies who are so heavily, their vaccines so heavily funded on the taxpayer dollar, are now making so much money on the taxpayer handing these out. Interesting statement from Anthony Fauci, and this I think goes and adds to why I think that more vaccinations are coming. Fauci is saying that we're starting to see an uptick, and I want to make sure I quote him exactly here. What we're starting to see now is an uptick in hospitalizations among people who have been vaccinated but not boosted. It's a significant proportion, but not the majority by any means. So again, that's Dr. Fauci, what he's saying. This isn't from Kyle Anzalone at all. Saying that people need now to be boosted, and one of the reasons that I think this is significant is we're starting to see several European countries say that fully vaccinated means 3 COVID doses. Now it's interesting that they're all counting this and starting to really phrase this as 2 or 3 vaccines and not 1 or 2, and because like if you take the Johnson & Johnson, exactly how long do you have to wait before you then need a booster, and can you take that less often or something like that. A lot of questions about all this, also mixing vaccinations and stuff like that, because I don't believe the booster has been approved for even emergency use for anyone but Pfizer in the United States at this point. So lots of interesting questions about the vaccine, what's going to happen. I'm not, giving any kind of medical analysis here. I'm just talking about policy and what's going on for Americans and what kind of, regulation and what we have to deal with from our government regarding the vaccine. Now, Moderna is seeking approval for the vaccination and or to get boosters for the vaccination. I'm not sure when this is going to come for Pfizer and how long it would take for the FDA to give the emergency approval for the third Moderna vaccination. Now, one interesting thing on the three vaccinations I want to point out, and again, I've been saying this from the beginning, is that, if you want to be considered fully vaccinated, that means now taking 2 shots and a booster, essentially. That's 3 shots. And while they say that the Pfizer vaccine has full FDA approval, that is only for the first 2 doses. And so I feel like there was a real bait and switch done there with how that was done. They really haven't given full approval to these vaccines yet, or even to the Pfizer one yet. Now, along with vaccines, they're also developing pills, and Pfizer is now seeking emergency use authorization for their COVID-19 antiviral pill. Merck has also developed one of these pills. I'm not sure where that pill is particularly at, where it's being used and everything like that, but it starts to raise the question of how important that these vaccine mandates actually are, if there is a pill that could help to, according to Pfizer, they are saying reduce the chance of hospitalization or death by like up to 89%. So I think it really calls into question like how rigid we have to be with the vaccines if there's other ways to handle COVID and to give people other options. Just a few more stories on COVID here. Real quick on the COVID pills, actually. The U.S. is planning to buy enough of the Pfizer pills to treat 10 million people, and they will spend over $5 billion on that medication. So another big payday for Pfizer. Want to mention that Pfizer and Merck did agree to share the recipe for the COVID antiviral pill through licensing agreements. I don't want to give them too much credit. I think you'll really have to look at the letter of the licensing agreement to see how much these companies plan to profit still off of other people making the drugs. But they are apparently going to let lower income countries make these drugs, so it could help to, curb any kind of COVID deaths that you have in countries where there's very low to almost no vaccination happening at this point. Um, Let's see. There were 2 million Allume at-home COVID tests that were recently recalled due to false positives. And then this very interesting story from NBC News looking into what companies are getting their PPP loans forgiven. These were the loans that were given out early in the COVID days through the federal government, basically saying like you meet payroll and everything like that. We're giving you all this money. Well, a lot of companies did very well through the pandemic. They didn't suffer whatsoever or had a lot of money in the first place, still took these loans and are still getting these loans forgiven. At least $120 million from companies who did better during the pandemic than pre-pandemic have had loans forgiven by the federal government. This is very disturbing corruption and just taxpayer dollars being stolen. Hundreds of millions we're talking about at this point.